Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I know it's an early morning, a day after, and really appreciate all of you guys being here. And the way it goes, probably we'll introduce ourselves quickly, and then I'll have some questions for these guys. Since the audience is really light here right now, open to take some questions along the way. If you have something, raise your hand. More than happy to answer any of your questions too. Okay. Thank you once again for coming. That's it, Sri. Want to start introduce yourself and then.
Yeah, happy to. Prakash, thank you so much. Happy to be here. My name is Sridhar Namraju. I live about an hour and 15 minutes, towards, I would say, Hartford, Connecticut. I'm pretty close to Hartford, so the drive was pretty smooth coming in last night, no traffic. But this morning was a little bit of a challenge because we didn't know whether the Uber driver dropped us in front of the Seaport Hotel, and we sort of got confused a little bit. We walked around for 10, 15 minutes, but finally landed up. So I've been in the security space for almost a couple of decades now. Literally, you can call me born and raised in technology kind of stuff. Ever since I came out of grad school, I've been in the tech area, working in multiple companies, but mostly financial services like Citi, JP Morgan, Mass Mutual, and now BMO. So I look after information security for BMO. They call me the CISO. And like I said, based out of Hartford, married, 2 boys, both out of home, and me and my wife, empty nesters. And we love it that way.
Thank you, Sri.
A little bit about me.
Much appreciate that. Gary, you want to go next?
Yeah, Prakash, and thank you for having us. Thank you for being great partners with us. So I'm Gary Michel. I lead our security business globally, working with our largest systems integrators, of which we're thrilled to be with PwC. I've been in the security business for 20 years. I have done 2 or 3 things that hopefully you'll find interesting today. I've done a lot of migration projects to the cloud, where I've run information security and risk and compliance programs. I've been in the middle of some of the largest breaches in the world, including Maersk, Equifax, and I've done a lot of work in the incident response and incident management space. And what I'm really doing right now at AWS is working with our partners to really increase our capabilities in security, moving further up the stack in areas like Fusion Center, security operations, managed detect and response. And our reliance on our partners is going to be a really key component of the AWS strategy.
Thank you, Gary, for that. Again, I am Prakash Venkata, partner in the PwC practice, focused on cybersecurity. I've been with PwC for over 15 years now. Before that, industry, good 8 years of experience there. Most of the experience has been with financial services clients. I've done end-to-end, implementation, strategy, transformation. And in the last few years, I've spent a lot of time on the cloud side of the world. It's changing, it's morphing. However, most of the clients are in the hybrid model, thinking about multi-cloud environments, and these are some of the things we'll talk about. And I have worked with both Gary as well as Shri. Shri for a long time now. We have done some good transformation projects along the way for a lot of the good clients. And a couple of things I will be asking Shri also about the transformation and why and why not. That's it, Shri. I'll start with you. So, a lot is going on. I know you said it's more than 2 decades of experience, going from on-prem model to the cloud. A lot of reinvention has been happening. What are your thought processes there? How are you seeing this? When you go from organization to organization and seeing the change happening, what's behind it?
Yeah, it's a tough question, right? So if I reflect on the journey, I think the most accelerated part of the journey was during this pandemic. So literally my mindset prior to the pandemic was different, and post-pandemic it's different. There's a lot of learning for me internally. I used to be a guy, on March 14th of 2020, if you asked me can I work from home, my answer would have been no. From March 16th, right, my mindset has changed completely. And what I've noticed is we are more productive working from home than coming into the office, spending 2 hours a day, commuting kind of stuff. So the transformation, trying back to your question on on the journey to the cloud, again, the same concept. If you ask me on March 14th or 13th, 2020, my answer would be, yeah, we'll sort of look at it, we'll take our time, we just want to make sure that data is secure because I work in financial services. We need to make sure that the right controls are in place. And literally we were not very pro-cloud per se in those days, even though there were some advocates in the organization. But starting 15th of March, when all the airports got shut down and I was forced to take the last flight out of Chicago to Connecticut, and from 16th morning, I started working from home, I quickly realized the importance of cloud and really embarking on the journey and the need to move forward. So literally we had to make sure remote connectivity worked for thousands of people in no time. Our collaboration tools, or communication tools that we had in-house were not adequate. So we had to literally move to a different toolkits, especially SaaS providers, very rapidly, in a matter of weeks, in a couple of weeks' time, we had the products up and running. We had the whole organization completely remote. We had to service our clients digitally. So I haven't seen that rapid implementation of cloud ever in my life or any product in a financial services organization that I've seen during the pandemic. So there are a lot of lessons learned. So from there on, whether it's SaaS providers or PaaS or IaaS or whatever these, apologies, these acronyms for technologists like me, SaaS means products you use Salesforce and Workday, software as a service, product as a service, infrastructure as a service. Coming from the banking industry, we are used to these acronyms, so I apologize. If you guys don't understand an acronym, please feel free to stop me. But our usage of these SaaS products accelerated dramatically. We moved a whole line of business in a span of 4 months from on-prem to the cloud. The transportation finance business, which is headquartered in Dallas, everything is in the cloud, in AWS today. So that sort of acceleration I haven't seen. Being a security guy, I was always a naysayer.
Yeah.
And now I'm totally pro, let's go there. What I've learned in this journey is, the security is all about how well we leverage the constructs provided by the security service providers. It's how well we leverage it, how do we understand it, can we configure it right, can we leverage it right? Obviously, we are not the experts in this space, so previously my thinking was, let's do everything in-house so we're more secure, but that's probably not the right way of doing it. So what I've learned is, let's learn how to leverage these services and products better, configure them better, leverage them better, so we are better as an organization. Time to market, efficiency, scale, innovation, agility, all these things come into play. Sorry, I gave you a long answer to a short question.
That's a very good answer. To add to that, Gary, I know the amount of change that has happened in the last few years, especially when it comes to AWS and security, has become a top priority. You are reinventing yourself. Okay, what's your thought process behind it?
Yeah, and certainly from March 20th forward, it's been a incredible journey, and capacity and migration projects have just accelerated. What's very interesting, and one of the challenges we see around movement to the cloud is many times the CTO and the CISO aren't collaborating very effectively, and there's this rush to migrate workloads, and projects always get stalled around the information security architecture review, and does the CISO have the time, the capacity to manifest a migration? And as we reinvent ourselves, we're moving so much further into the enterprise space, and we're seeing enterprise applications begin to move with rapidness. And we have a clear philosophy at AWS. One, security is job zero. Everything else really doesn't matter if you can't demonstrate to our customers, to our partners, that it is indeed job zero. And the way we make it job zero is, one, we believe it's a shared responsibility. And we talk about the shared responsibility model is It's not our job to protect core applications. It is our job to protect the perimeter. And more of this shared responsibility model has customers, partners, and us working together in a highly collaborative manner. And some of the challenges we've seen as workloads move to the cloud, and Sri, I'm sure you see this, is there's 2 million open jobs right now in the cybersecurity business. And there's this huge competitiveness for people. There's competitiveness for retention of people. And I think what I've been incredibly surprised by and pleasantly surprised by is the willingness of large enterprises to say, you know what, let's make this Amazon's accountability. Let's make it our responsibility. So in a very interesting way, the lack of people has basically driven a lot of large enterprises to say, let's lean in heavier with Amazon. And as folks lean in heavier, we've got to move further up the stack. You know, today we provide Lego blocks. It's literally the child's Lego block approach. We give it to our partners, we give it to our customers, and we'll provide foundational security. But more and more our customers are saying, we need a single throat. We don't want to call X for detection, Y for resolution and response. So I think what you'll see us doing, and our partners are key, is providing more and more what I would call value-added security services. Things like security operations, incident response. There'll be a heavy lean in on AI and ML. You know, the more you can use data to automate the problem, the better off you're going to be. So those are some of the things we're doing to transform our capabilities in security.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Gary. I mean, like, again, like, you know, with pandemic, acceleration has happened. You guys are thinking differently too. I mean, like, to get into the cloud or like sustaining within the cloud. Like a lot of times these migrations were happening. Now more about modernization. With modernization, embedding security as job zero.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like an afterthought. And that is where like coming together, the CISOs and the CIOs and like the developers as well as security teams coming together. That is something we have been noticing very rapidly, integration of that one happening. And the thin line has become too thin. I mean, like a lot of times in the past, security is an afterthought. They would come in and like it looks like an enforcer. Not anymore. I mean, like it's more of a collaboration model. And I'm glad from the AWS side, I mean, like you guys are actually thinking through those lenses and saying, how do I enable our developers to be successful? Like when they are thinking about it, end to end, they are thinking. So that's a great way to go about it. So back to you, Sri. How do you get connected early enough? I mean, like a lot of times when we go, I mean, like as a developer, when I think about like, you know, talking to security, it's like, oh, we build the product to the business requirements. You guys think more from the risk side. So how is that changing? I mean, like are people, that cultural change is happening in the organizations, thinking about risk along with the business requirements and like get to market as fast as possible?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, right? So, and I've struggled with this like quite a bit in my life, like almost 20 years, but hopefully like, you know, I'm getting closer to like, you know, sort of solving it. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things that has worked for me is getting the threats and the intelligence in front of like some of the key stakeholders, like board members,
Yep.
executive committee members, in a much more consumable fashion, drives like, you know, sort of, I think the sense of what the marketplace is like today. Like you see a lot of ransomware, you see a lot of like DDoS attacks, you see a lot of these things happening in the industry. So one is getting that awareness going with the board of directors, with the executive committee members definitely has worked a long way. So automatically, like, you know, sort of when it comes, the message comes down from the top saying, hey, are we thinking about security? Are we thinking about this? Are we thinking about that? It sort of permeates itself within the organization, right? It gets down to the next levels. People start proactively engaging us as opposed to we trying to reach out and back to your point, being naysayers, right? So that's the first thing that I've learned. The pandemic actually has helped me quite a bit in that space, to be honest with you. Then the second piece is there is a need in the organization to process more data, have more computing power. There's a need for the developers to be using the latest and greatest, like, you know, toolkits out there, be it open source or be it like all the fancy like analytics tools that you get like, straight from your cloud service providers, which would have taken us years to develop in-house. That's there at their fingertips. The question now becomes is, how do we get them to use it in a very secure manner without compromising a general regulatory guidelines that are out there, because we are a heavy regulated industry, especially in the banking space. We've got like regulators on site looking at stuff on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. I spend like almost 20% of my time with the regulators. So how do we make sure we conform to those constructs and operate within those guidelines? How do we make sure sort of the configurations or the connectivity or generally the guardrails we are providing to the organization conforms to the standards that we have outlined? Obviously the standards will conform to the regulations for sure. And then the question is, how do we bring that threat intelligence to the development community on a real-time basis, so that way they know sort of how to do things in the right manner. Examples would be sort of how to avoid cross-site scripting, how to sort of build the right kinds of things in your source code. Can you give them tips, or can you give them some tools at their fingertips? Can you provide some static analysis as they're developing code, checking stuff in, checking stuff out? Some dynamic analysis, once they throw stuff into production. Can you feed them information on a real-time basis so it's consumable? The word consumable I'm underlying because we are technologists, right? This is what I've also learned, sort of in my life, is to be able to speak in simple terms so people a 10-year-old can understand, and that's the hardest part of my job. And I struggle with that today. Most of technologists struggle with that.
Yeah.
So getting stuff consumable to developers, consumable to executives, consumable to board members. How do we dumb it down to an extent that we understand it? So that goes back to your question on decision making. So decision making is not just security, it's joint accountability kind of stuff. Hey, we're in it together. I'm accountable, so are you. So you build your stuff in a secure manner, you deployed it in a secure manner. And then all the constructs, all the greatest and greatest, your CI/CD pipelines, getting DevSecOps embedded into the culture of the organization. Sorry, I can speak about this topic forever kind of stuff, but generally those are some of the things. And then your SDLC, the constructs, even before it gets to the SDLC, the ideation phase, where the businesses are thinking through strategy, sort of if you're sitting at the table, structure the organization in such a way that you've got a person sitting at the table in the ideation phase. So by the time it hits the planning phase, at least we've got some ideas into it. So these sorts of things have helped me quite a bit. Still a long journey. I'm not anywhere close to hitting it out of the park. One day at a time.
Thank you, Sridhar. So based on that, I know even AWS is still thinking along the same lines. There's a lot of innovation going on, a lot of product strategies going on. Gary, anything you can share with this team?
Yeah, a few things. One, Trey, it was great to hear you talk about security as a top-down as opposed to a bottom-up. And as we migrate our strategy deeper into the enterprise, we believe that a lot of decisions our customers are going to be making are going to be board level and CEO level decisions. There's a number of programs that we're going to be implementing around board level exercises and board level readiness and board level preparedness. And if you're highly regulated, a couple of things to call out is one, the accountability that boards are going to have if some of the legislation that's in Congress right now in front of the SEC will cause the readiness and the preparedness and creating exercises and run books to make sure your boards are prepared, because there's so many decisions that need to be made. When do we turn off our customers? When do we communicate to the press? When do we call law enforcement? All these are going to be decisions that, you'll be involved, but I think you'll communicate upward to your CEO, your board. So I think that's a key component. I can't stress enough the regulatory side of this. Folks who have never migrated workloads to the cloud, especially in heavily regulated industries, don't realize that the regulators around the world have different and varying obligations that they're going to hold you to. And I think the number one caution, number one blocker to cloud adoption in banking and healthcare that we see is the lack of really being prepared to keep the regulators happy. Being able to demonstrate you've got your obligations, you've got your controls in place. So one of the things you're going to see us doing is automating a lot of those processes. You know, AI and ML really lend themselves now to automation. So I think you'll see a lot of that. And then, Drew, you talked about data, and we talk about what we call actionable security. And today, the problem in most security operations centers is the data is static. It's not highly actionable. You've got SOC operators chasing false positives while the bad guys are taking advantage of that. And I think when you think about data and the things that we can do building data lakes with our partners, I think what you'll see is less interdependency on people and much more dependency on automation. I mean, the reality is it takes 286 days to resolve a breach. And the cost is somewhere around $4 million. That's just not acceptable. And I think as you see where we go over the next 12 to 18 months, automation, orchestration, less dependency on people, but making sure that data that's really key to whether you're going to be the next big victim is highly actionable.
Yeah, that's great insight. Towards that, Gary, I mean, like product-wise, is there anything coming up? I mean, like, you know, how you guys are thinking about what you would like to do or like invest in?
Yeah, I think, again, I'll come back to the data lake. We think the data lake becomes the epicenter of a lot of our future security products. You'll see a lot of AI, ML insights that we're going to provide ourselves. And I think the key for Amazon right now is we're going to move further and further up the stack. The ability to take data in from any source, whether it be AML, KYC, financial fraud, the ability to import and ingest. There's SIMs everywhere, right? You know that better than anyone. You've got to be able to import that data and extract that data from any source. So I think this data centricity and actionable data will really begin to manifest itself in a lot of things you'll see from us.
Yeah, thank you. So based on what I'm hearing, I mean, like there's a lot going on, like between identification, protection, detection. I mean, those are the areas you are really investing into.
Correct.
And also you are able to ingest data from multiple places. I mean, like really abstract, I mean, rather than like afterthought, embedded security along the line. And in the end, I mean, like the incident management.
Yep.
In some ways, like super automated end-to-end with minimal human interaction.
Correct.
These are embedded.
Yep.
Cultural shifts are happening, and like you guys are moving in that direction. You guys are able to provide that kind of tools available to the clients to use it.
And I think there's this reality that in the shared responsibility model, the eyes on glass from large companies are not going to go away. And it's the ability to integrate that data from the client, from the point of detection, and really be able to respond in a quicker manner, right? It's, unfortunately, Riley, it's not a matter of if you're going to get breached, it's when. And the mechanisms and the run books and the playbooks and the ability to exercise the insights that you have on your data are going to be the key to whether you're the next headline or you can get a breach resolved in an expedient manner.
Yeah. So one point, Gary, I mean, like when we were talking about it, I know in the past, it was always like, you know, everything in one platform, one ecosystem is what they were talking about. Lately, I'm seeing that shift of like, you know, okay, bring in your data from externally, integrate with like other third-party cloud providers or tools. Is this going to be the new way of approach for AWS?
It will, and some of the stuff we're thinking about doing with you will manifest itself. Yeah. I mean, even today, if you look at our current capabilities, you know, you can see here today how we're ingesting CrowdStrike data, right? And we're ingesting data from Palo Alto, and we're able to integrate multiple SIMs like Splunk and RSite and QRadar. You'll see that tighter integration really move forward. And I think that, again, I keep coming back to the data lake, where today the SIM, to some degree, has been the point of integration. I think with XDR and managed detect and response, I think you'll see the SIM become seconded to the data lake, and the data lake, to some degree, will be the point of integration.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Sri, on that?
No, it's a very complex problem, and we struggle with this quite a bit, right? Data comes from so many different sources. Data exists, like your logs exist in some places, don't exist in some cases. If they exist, they're not like, sort of, they don't have the right data. So plugging it into your SIM, and then from there, like, writing custom code for generating those alerts and looking for a needle in a haystack has been a problem in this industry for almost like several decades now.
Yeah.
So it's getting better, like, back to your point, Gary, on AI, ML, like things are getting better. Like, there's the concepts of Yuba and these analytics that are coming into play, and better tools, better like stuff, but terribly expensive. Terribly expensive, like, for any small and medium-sized businesses. Coming from a large bank, so it's okay, like, sort of because we have the budgets to cover these sorts of things. But small and medium businesses, like, do struggle. So you saw the presidential order come down, like saying, hey, sort of cybersecurity, it's important. You guys need to embark on this. But literally, if you think through the practical usage of things, it's hard. So there is definitely a problem statement out there in the industry saying, sort of, is there a better way of doing it in a much cheaper fashion at scale, serving to small and medium businesses? I definitely see it as an opportunity.
And I think what you'll see come from that, you'll see a lot of utilities that begin to form, to some degree, dial tone for security.
Yeah.
And the accountability that a medium and small size bank has is no different than the accountability that you have.
Right.
But to your point, they don't have the budget, don't have the people. And I think leaning in with partners like PW that can run these things, have eyes on glass, capable of the response. We think a lot of the accountability, as we move more and more of our revenue towards large partners, we think the accountability gets shared between us, the large systems integrators. And I think if we're sitting here in 5 years, the majority of this is going to move to a managed service model. That would be my sense.
Fair. So
Yep.
those are my thoughts.
Yeah. So changing a little bit, okay. So going back to the earlier question I had, saying that how are you creating that stronger connections between business and the security teams? So if you look at it in the past, business always thought security is an impediment. Yeah. Okay. During the cloud, like pandemic, lots has changed. You moved faster, you collaborated. How is that going to change going forward, and how do you want to move forward?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So one, again, when I started my journey in financial services industry, it was always the business and IT. Mm-hmm. Hey, I remember the days like back in the early 90s where people would call me a technician. Those were the days, right? To where we are today is IT is the business. So you provide, like the way I define it is, we provide financial services. We are an IT firm that provides financial services. Mm-hmm. End of the day, right? That's how I think about it. That's how most leaders have started thinking about it post-pandemic. Like during the pandemic, everything has become like IT-centric. So the beauty of this is they've realized, like, in order to like increase their revenues, in order to increase the market share, in order to grow the business, like, IT is front and center. No two ways about it. And if it's front and center, security is also front and center. Yeah. No two ways about it, right? So the beauty of this is the business leaders have realized this, and they started like pulling security deep into their ideation phases of business strategy. Hey, I'm thinking about this, like, sort of, hey, I want to grow this market segment. I want to do this. I want to do that. What are some of the challenges? Like, so they pull your relevant delivery partners and security partners into it. So that's the pandemic, the landscape, the stuff has actually helped us in a big way. Second, the structure, the constructs of the organization, how you structure your business model or your organizational structure, like purely has to go after business strategy. So I keep always saying that structure has to follow strategy. So if your strategy is to make sure like you're embedding deep into the thought process, the ideation phase, into the business side of things. So previously we used to have the BISO model, like Business Information Security Officer, one assigned to the line of business, like, sort of very IT-centric kind of stuff. It probably, like, in some cases it worked, but during the pandemic stuff, it really didn't work that much. So it helped with the superficial things, like, sort of, hey, how do I get these things done? Like if there's a predefined project, like providing those guardrails and stuff, it worked. But for cybersecurity leaders to embed themselves deeper into the business units and what they're doing, I think was the result of the pandemic. So it's not just like you can't define just a BISO model and say, okay, it's your responsibility. It's actually, I would say it's my accountability, like that I need to know what the business strategy is. I need to be closer to them. I need to establish that trust and rapport with the business leaders. And so do my direct reports as well, right? They're all like leading large hundreds of people kind of stuff. They need to be embedded deep into the organization so they understand what the leaders are thinking and where they're taking. So we generate that like, sort of interaction at the senior levels in the organization. So we are comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
Like sort of saying, there's trust, there's rapport. In some cases, there's healthy conflict, but healthy conflict for a good reason. End of the day, we are trying to do what's right for the organization. So those sorts of things, I mean, what I've learned is me as a security professional and my leaders as security professionals, we just need to get out of staying behind an email or staying behind a laptop or a desktop and literally like engaging with people and having a conversation with them and trying to drive that rationale across the organization. That has helped in a big way. And lastly, like I would touch on this top-down, like, kind of thing that you also were reiterating, Gary. The messaging from the board, from the executive committee on the importance of security as we put the intelligence in front of them, the actions we need to take, the investments we need to make to check and adjust, because security is not something you have a defined budget and you're done. We have to check and adjust on a daily basis. Like who knew like Log4j, like when it came out, right? There are things we had to do from asset management to like getting the CMDB right to adjusting the vulnerability management tools to configuration. There was a complete revamp of things we had to do. So it's like a check and adjust model, like, sort of, which needs to be understood and embraced by the senior leaders in the organization. And the minute they get it, and if I'm able to sell it in a consumable manner, in a simplistic manner, if I'm able to sell it, they're on board and they say, yep, it's very important for the business. Because end of the day, like, the way I see it is, we are in the trust business. Financial services is nothing but trust. Like you erode that trust in the marketplace, you won't be able to grow, you'll further actually like, sort of shrink in the marketplace. So establishing that trust in the marketplace by protecting the information of your employees and your customers, making sure the regulatory oversight is like you're catering to the right things from a regulatory oversight perspective, that you don't have any major gaps. All these things like help towards building a good brand, and that helps in a big way.
Thank you, Sri. So along those lines for you, Gary, if you look at it, AWS, when it started, the target audience was always IT. You chased out after IT, not the businesses. Saying that, hey, transformation, IT transformation, that is how. Yet now I'm seeing the morphing there happening. You're targeting the businesses. You're talking about the business problems you want to solve. What has changed there?
So I think the transition between a developer-led migration to the cloud towards core enterprise applications has been, to some degree, again, I think COVID had a lot to do with this. That's been a key driver. And until recently, we didn't go out, we didn't talk to business leaders, we talked to technical folks. And now, more and more, we're creating board-level discussions, we're creating leadership discussions at the business level. And part of what we're trying to do is bring security to the front, not to the back. And I think until recently, business leaders didn't think about security as the front end to everything they want to do, because they have one thing in mind: move, migrate applications, generate revenue. Right? That's their leading mentality. So we do a lot of executive training right now. We are purposeful in providing training to our customers, training through you, to educate executives on the importance of cloud and the importance of security. And I think there's two ways we do this. One, we didn't talk about this yet, but governance is key.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right governance and you don't have the right interlock between the business, the CTO, the CISO, more and more we're trying to get the chief risk officer and the chief compliance officer involved in these discussions and create a governance loop where there's integration, there's interlock, and there's communication. The second, get the right controls in place early. Too many times we see customers migrate but don't have the right controls. You've got to invest the time up front with your leadership and your business teams. And I think that's where the collaboration between the CISO, the chief compliance officer, and the chief risk officer becomes really important. And then the last thing, and we're going to do a lot more of this, is creating a security culture by bringing the business to the table with the CISO to do readiness and business response exercises. I think for too long, response exercises have been technical in nature, right? They've been war games, they've been blue team, red team. But think about a CEO or a head of a business line that all of a sudden has a member of the press call them up and say, we understand that the bank is under attack. They're not trained to do that response. A CEO isn't trained to respond to an inquiry by the FBI. So I think these business response exercises where you have injects of a reporter, the FBI, when do you call out a breach? When do you declare a breach? When do you communicate to your customers? You'll see us really lean in being able to drive this connection between the business and the CISO and the technical group by creating these business response exercises to get folks ready.
Thank you, Gary, for that. So what I'm hearing is, one, IT folks really understand the business. Okay, the business is trying to understand the IT, but at the same time, when you developers, security guys, think about what is the risk, what is the business, how do we integrate with it, how do we better gather the requirements through the industry, like on the business perspective, saying that what are they trying to accomplish, end goals, and then like in the end, again, like talking about if something goes wrong, what kind of controls do we have?
Correct.
Again, creating that culture of security along those lines. During the pandemic, some see the pros and some see the cons. A lot of times, I'm working from home, it's my comfort zone. And especially if you guys are using offshore and few other things, what was the impact? What was that cultural shift you had to do? Thinking of security, not printing something at home, or not doing something which is appropriate. How did you force that one?
Yeah, so again, I think I've said this before, but I'll reiterate it, is the top-down messaging is critically important. And for that to happen, we have to do our job to make sure we put the right information, the right data in front of the right leaders in a simplistic, consumable manner, the right intelligence on a daily basis. So that's critically important. The second thing I would say is never let a crisis go to waste. Mm-hmm. Never. So the pandemic, right, actually is a blessing for all our IT folks. So it has changed the mindsets of leaders, not just IT leaders, but all business leaders across the board. So leveraging that pandemic, driving the sense where the market is, the threats, the intelligence that we get from the marketplace. Previously, if you look at business leaders, they would get intelligence, but they would get intelligence on products and services, what competitors are doing, how much are they charging their customers, what's their strategy. This was all corporate intelligence that we used to capture. But now, I sense an appetite for real like security, like threat intelligence, like going into like, the boards and into like the executive committees, which was never even heard of before pre-pandemic. So that was another like big factor. There's appetite for this information at all levels in the organization. So when people are thinking of, hey, should I be using like, back to this SaaS product provided by a service provider like an AWS or somebody else, the first thing they would do is they would pick up the phone and call me or somebody in my group and say, hey, I know there is an enterprise process, but what should I be thinking about from a security standpoint? Never ever happened in the organization before. So again, like, we used to have a split between technology managed assets and business managed assets, right? It's a classic problem in the industry. So all the SaaS providers pre-pandemic were all business managed assets. Hey, I'm just going to their website, I'm going to register, I'm going to use their products and services. I don't need to do anything, right? But now they started thinking, oh my God, like, that probably like I need to go through my security because I have a bunch of users there, I'm putting data there. Do we have the right guardrails or not? It's like all of a sudden this sense of like, sort of doing the right thing from a bank perspective, like, came into play. And I wouldn't say it's like just one factor driving it. One, it's the regulatory oversight that's coming from the regulators because they are driving a set of like, sort of guardrails in the organization. Hey, we expect the security organization to have a complete handle on their SaaS providers. We expect them to manage privileged access for all their SaaS providers. We never used to do this prior to the pandemic, right? Now, all of a sudden, anybody on the business side or any side in the organization wants to use a SaaS provider, they have to go through a process and get their privileged access into the privileged access management system that we have in place. It's an example. So these sorts of things, like one, regulatory driven, there's board driven, executive committee driven, and then there's work on our side to drive that thing. So it comes from all different angles, Prakash. Like, it's not like coming from one place. A lot of work, but I'm happy in a way, like, again, going back to never let a crisis go to waste. Whatever that crisis is, pandemic was one, your organization might get hit with something, a ransomware, a malware. Always use it to your advantage.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, Sri, is like actually pandemic was helpful for the security guys.
100%.
There is a better
Absolutely.
cultural shift that has happened between the business as well as IT. And people are thinking about it ahead of time rather than as an afterthought.
That's correct.
So again, there's 10 minutes left, guys. So I'll open up for any other questions that comes from you guys. But like one of the couple of those things we need to talk about is like, how is like PwC helping? I mean, like, to make customers easier. I mean, like if I'm working with you guys and like I know AWS is already there, how are we helping you guys? Where are you thinking? I mean, like we could have done a better job for you guys.
So I'll be blunt with you, Prakash.
Yes.
Like, I'm not the kind of guy who will endorse a vendor, right?
Yeah.
That's just not my style. We work with like several partners out there. But we work extensively with PwC. We use AWS in a very big manner. I mean, that's our primary, like, sort of cloud service provider in the bank. And we've defined like everything we try and do is like, sort of whether it's, so one is AWS, the second one like that we use is Azure because you can't put all eggs in one basket kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So there's been quite a bit, like I've been working with PwC for several decades now, even in my previous life. Yep. In MassMutual, like, engaged with PwC. It's always been, my experience has been great. Services like, that you guys provide are like state of the art. You guys know what you're doing. You know what where the industry is, where the regulatory environment is, and you've got like problem solvers on your team. So I've always been happy with the services. I mean, like, sort of on an average level. There might be some engagements that might be like, some that have gone like really well, some engagements not so well, but generalizing it, like, sort of interactions have been like, have been great, professional, and really good.
Thank you, Shri, for that endorsement. So last question for you, Gary. Fusion Center, I know you talked a couple of times, you brought it up. What do you mean by that? How are you working with PwC on that one?
So a taxonomy, and I think this is a very key question. If you look at large organizations, what you've had segregation between risk and compliance and security. You've had threat intelligence sitting on one side of the organization. You've had financial fraud, financial crimes, know your customer, sitting somewhere else in the organization. And the reality is, in the event of a crisis or in the event of a crime, there's this interdependency and this interlock between all the functions in a large organization. And I think two things are happening and are going to happen is one, you need to have all those folks together. They have to be in the same physical room. There's a lot of fusion centers happening up in Canada right now, TD Bank, yourselves. And then tying it back together with the data, right? You can't have financial crime data coming in one place. You can't have cyber detection data coming in somewhere else because the interdependency of that data will, again, determine your ability to respond and to resolve. So we see that all coming together. We think working with a partner like PwC brings a lot of advantage. One, you help us identify the risk and compliance issues and concerns right up front. That is a differentiator for PwC. We work with lots of partners and they're tech savvy and they all have great operations. But the uniqueness of your risk and compliance capabilities up front, I think are gonna really be a great capability. And as we move further up the stack, we don't want to run security operations. We want to enable them. And being able to look to you as an enabler and a provider, I think you'll see us get closer and closer and leaning in with companies like PwC to build next generation SOCs, to build these fusion centers. We don't want to run them. We want to enable them. And I think you'll see our operational interlock get stronger over the next couple of years.
Thank you, Gary, for that. Along those same lines, Sri, I know, you work with PwC. It was a great acceleration, like building the fusion center. You did co-locate a lot of people, pandemic happened, and how did you take it? What was the thought behind putting a fusion center? How did it work out during the pandemic for you?
Yeah, so back to what Gary was saying, data cannot be residing in multiple places, right? Like, sort of your physical security, like in one place, your logical security is another place, then your customer access in another place. So generally, like, sort of if you bring these things together, there's a big advantage, like, sort of definitely a big help from PwC, like in the thought process, in the thought leadership, in the model, things like that. Simple examples, like living examples. I have a person like, sort of swiping their badge in, and then you find the access, the logical access from a different location. You need to know about it. Like, unless you bring the physical security and logical security data together, you won't be able to detect something like that. That's an example, right? So same thing with customer access, account takeovers. You can't say, hey, this is like completely fraud related, nothing to do with from a cyber standpoint. But then if you try and bring the cyber data, the malware data together with the account takeover data, which is the customer's email address, trying to like figure out like what happened. There's a fusion between fraud and cybersecurity there kind of stuff. Yeah. So you have to work together in order to better service your customers. So in other words, like, what I'm saying is this security data lake that we build should like probably have data from all sources in order to be able to detect a crime or a potential like malicious activity from a digital perspective, be it like cyber fraud, physical, or like AML or KYC or whatever. Eventually, like, sort of you can, with the data like existing in a place, and you're able to leverage that data well, you're able to like, use the intelligence from that data and action it accordingly. You are able to better detect, respond, and contain those events in a timely manner.
Thank you, Sri. Hey, with that said, like, any questions from the audience? Like anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't.
So I'm going to repeat the question.
Yeah,
so I'm going to repeat. A lot of cultural shifts between business, IT, and security has happened. During the pandemic, have you seen some cultural shifts within the security groups? How they work, how they interact, and how, whether it's like good or bad?
Yeah, it is. I would say good and bad, both kind of stuff. Good in a way that I'm able to see security professionals not just hide behind emails and hide behind like monitors kind of stuff, but really get engaged in discussions. I've seen leadership development across several individuals in the organization, which did not get, there was no platform for them to demonstrate that before. So it was a big help for individuals who wanted to like grow as leaders and demonstrate that executive presence, demonstrate that they need visibility in the organization. Obviously, the bad comes with that as well. The bad is you can't hide anymore. You have to get in front of people. So people who don't like that, and people who just want to hide behind like, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying this like in any derogatory manner. There's some people who like to love their job. They want to do their job and they just want to be isolated from everybody else. There's nothing wrong with it, but we just need to be cognizant from a leadership perspective is that's what that person likes, and you want to put them in roles that cater to that sort of thing. If not, you'll see too much attrition. And that's the risk that comes with it, and that's the bad part of it kind of stuff. So there's work that we need to do as leaders in the organization to recognize that.
It's a good question, Jessica. Anyone else?
One in the back of the room,
Oh,
I think.
sorry. Go ahead. Yep, that's a great question. I mean,
Can you repeat it? Because I had trouble hearing it.
so what happened during the pandemic? I mean, like the lessons learned, like we have a lot of good lessons we learned and everything else. But like there are things we learned and then wish we had learned earlier, or like wish we did not, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah.
So I will tell you what we didn't understand, and we clearly do now, is that security at home has to equal security at work. And a lot of folks, when they work from home, they're on social media, they're doing social engineering. And one of the things we saw increase was the amount of bad behavior, inadvertent bad behavior using tools like Twitter, tools like Facebook. Social engineering is where the bad guys target a lot of vulnerability. We had to quickly ourselves reconcile this balance between security at work and security at home. And we enhanced a lot of our remote security. We enhanced a lot of our VPN capability. And going to two-step authentication and two-step verification was one of the ways we began to deal with the reality that people were at home and they were going on Facebook and they were going on Twitter. And that was an eye-opener for us.
Yeah. A couple of things from my perspective. Again, I thought like working from home was great. The workload that increased was significant. We underestimated it. The boundaries. The first year I still could not figure out, and like all my team members had the same challenge because we were working until 8 o'clock. We are on the same video conferences. I think this year it has been a lot better, okay? Between the hybrid model and like, all the things we do, at least we say like after 6 o'clock, you don't have to be on the video conference. Or like, let's cut it up. I mean, like, 5 o'clock on Fridays, stop it. And the way we operated was very different. And the productivity, I mean, like the CISOs and like everybody else liked the productivity, but on the consulting side, I thought we were burning out. I mean, like the challenge was we were working too many hours. There was nothing else going on. Yes, I mean, we love our families, but the amount of time we were spending with them was actually reducing rather than increasing because we took things for granted. So if you ask me, I would spend more time understanding and like what our pros and cons are. And on the security side, again, like if you look at it, nationwide attacks, that significantly increased. We underestimated that. And that kept us really busy. Again, Sri, you want to add one more point and then we can wrap up?
Yeah, so this is again a personal lessons learned for me, right? So the first day I started working from home, the first 2 weeks, literally me and my wife, we were like getting ready to kill each other kind of stuff, right? So that's personally like, I've never worked from home before. I never like, sort of spent so much time at home. Like I used to always 100% travel. And literally like, and I didn't have the right ethics, right? So I wouldn't be in my study. I would be like walking around with the phone in my hand and talking, and that would irritate the hell out of her. So the first 2 weeks, literally like we were like getting ready to kill each other until I started changing my own behavior. And I started like sticking to my study kind of stuff. So that was my personal learning.
Okay, one lesson though, I mean, like, great experience, we can always look back, but like future, we don't know what else is coming. So if anything, I would suggest being resilient. I mean, like that is something I noticed everybody coming out and saying, okay, we survived. Okay, we got through it. I don't know which curveball will come next. I think we are better prepared. So are our kids. Okay, so that's like the next generation. So it's interesting to see how we are evolving. Again, lessons learned, personal time, work time. Okay, segregate it and move forward. With that said, thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate you guys coming in. I know it was early morning of the day after. Thank you very much for that. Okay.
Thanks, guys.